In these brief few moments, let us focus on some essential answerabilities, responsibilities, and duties that fall upon the shoulders of each one of us. It is usually the case that within any community or society, there are at least some people, sometimes less, sometimes more, who stand up for an essential good cause. And through them and because of them, everybody else benefits. When there is no such group, no such cohort of individuals, then the suffering is universal. We can cite some examples. Sometimes what happens is, in communities where there's a danger of flooding, rivers are breaking their banks and the water is pouring out of the sky. Communities get together and build their own flood barriers. There are many such incidents in not just one or two countries, many, in which an entire village or community or neighborhood has survived because people took their responsibility seriously. And it was a voluntary action. It's not as though everybody will turn out for such a cause, but the ones that do also benefit the rest. If there are wildfires, as can often happen in dry summertime, here and abroad, sometimes people volunteer to give assistance in the fight against the spread of the fire. In one way or another, they become part of that chain and that team. And the list goes on. There are many such examples. Natural disasters or political ones. Those which human beings have no control over and those which they do have some control over. It is those individuals who think beyond their own comfort and safety. We have so many heroes. Many of them now, having left this world, in Gaza, who put their own safety and security and comfort to one side to assist others, the injured, the number of clinicians and doctors who give their lives, hospital staff, to assist others. It's a long list. If you wrote a list of names, you would make many circles around this masjid, just with the medical professionals. Hundreds, thousands. There are different types of emergencies and urgencies. Here in the UK, so much welfare work, so much charity work is a consequence of an event or an incident which touched somebody. So they decided to set up an organization, a society, a charity, a helpline, establish a fund, a help group, a self-help group, a community, a resource pack, which has consequentially benefited many people in those circumstances, be it some sort of abuse or illness or some other condition or situation, emotional, physical, societal, groups which support the homeless. So this spirit within communities is what holds them together. Of course, you have the opposite situation as well. Those whose behavior and activities are a hazard, a problem, which needs to be resolved, and everybody else suffers. The Prophet ﷺ gave us an example of a ship which has two levels, two decks, the lower deck and the upper deck. And those in the lower deck, for their own convenience, make a decision amongst themselves. They say, who's going to bother climbing up to the top deck in order to collect fresh water? So why don't we just bore a hole in the wall of this vessel? So what they think they're doing, they think what they're doing is smart, for convenience. They don't realize that they're jeopardizing the safety of the entire crew and passengers, and that the entire vessel will be destroyed if they carry on with what they're about to do. If those who are on the upper deck don't make an effort to resolve the situation, if those who are on the upper gallery there don't make a decision to silence the kids, this Jumu'ah will not carry on. If those who are on the upper deck don't prevent those who are on the lower deck from making that hole in this ship, then the entire ship will sink. So this is Nahi anil munkar. This is preventing people from doing something which is wrong. When within a community, within the ummah, within society, there is no one to call out the wrong, then the consequence is that there's a risk that the entire community will be destroyed. You need within the community a group which does amr bil ma'roof and nahi anil munkar. But I'm coming to another point in this gathering of ours today, the ayah which I recited at the start. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, which has been the topical theme in one way or another throughout the week actually. We had our esteemed visiting scholar and guest, Shaykhul Islam Mufti Taqi Uthmani, who travelled up and down the country from Edinburgh to Glasgow, from Glasgow to Dundee and Aberdeen, and then towards England. And if you want to find a common theme, there were many. This is one of the themes which was touched on in one way or another on multiple occasions. It's about our responsibility towards our children, your responsibility towards your children, to protect them from the consequence of leaving this dunya without deen and iman, losing their identity, and falling into the pit of Jahannam as a consequence. The answerability is with the parents. If you as an individual are regular with your Jummah and Salah, and your Sawm and Zakah, and you perform your Hajj, and you do acts of charity, but you do not take any interest in your children, you are sinful, because your children are also your responsibility. But I want to mention another angle here, another aspect. In education, and this is the key point of today's lecture, today's sermon, in education across the board, whether we are talking about schools, primary or secondary, or we are talking of the maktab, the evening Islamic studies class, or we are talking about full-time Islamic institutions which teach all day, 9 to 5. There is one complaint, whether it's denominational religious schools and communities or mainstream education, there is one common complaint. That complaint is no longer about the children. It's a complaint about the behavior of the parents. Parents who defend the indefensible. Parents who do not want to show any respect to the teachers. I'm talking about the whole of the UK. They don't acknowledge that it's a partnership, it's a triangle, it's a triad. There are 3 stakeholders. And if the household is not united, then there are 4 stakeholders. The teacher, the student, and mum and dad. And in a situation when many households are such that mum is on one side of the spectrum, shall I change my words there? Because the word spectrum has other connotations. The mother is on one side of the fence and the father on the other. There's a tug of war between the parents. They both don't agree on how to raise the children. Then you have 4 stakeholders. And the consequence is the student is not disciplined in the classroom and does not behave and does not work hard and does not focus, does not make an effort, as is expected in a learning environment, or has a behavioral problem, and this issue is raised with mum and dad, rather than engaging with the teaching staff of both schools and madrasas and resolving the situation as stakeholders who have a positive role to play, they'll defend the child. Let me give you a scenario. There's a child that doesn't like mathematics, for example, struggles with this subject. And the teacher, out of concern for the students, applies gentle pressure on the student so the student will perform. And the student goes home and says, this teacher picks on me. And the parents believe what they hear. There is no concern to try to understand the situation. I'm not talking of teachers who might actually be going past a certain line and not giving young people the respect that they deserve. I'm not speaking about that situation. Parents will not even engage with the teacher. And now there are entire teachers groups and organizations, podcasts, YouTube channels which are devoted to assisting professional teachers around the country in mainstream schools to deal with abusive parents. You know how there'll be in this gathering doctors who work in hospitals, pharmacists. Nowadays, if you're a pharmacist or you're a doctor, it's quite possible that on a daily basis you'll be facing abuse from your patients because they want an extra dose of methadone, right? It's common, it's normal. If you're a shopkeeper, you get abuse from your customers, right? Well, teachers are getting abuse from parents. And they don't realize that as teachers, they can't help your children if they don't have your help. So that teamwork isn't there anymore. This title idea of entitlement, it's as though the entire establishment, wherever it may be, has to change for your sake, despite the fact that you may have no understanding in that particular area. I mean, you might be a professional engineer, but you might have no basic knowledge of medicine. You might be a doctor, but you might not be competent in fixing your car. There are different specializations. In Islam, the value system demands that we show respect to education. And this respect is not just for those who teach your kids dini education. It's also related to what you might call secular education. Only because the teacher is a teacher of maths or science or IT, it does not mean that they do not deserve respect from you and from your children. That's an Islamic ethos, an Islamic ethic. And subhanAllah, the ulama note, Shaykh Zakaria rahimahullah, he makes a note of this. He mentions that it is observed that those who show respect to their school teachers, we're not even talking about dini sciences, do very well in the world. They go very far. They succeed in their careers. In our parents' generation, for those of you who are younger, your grandparents' generation, it was normal and mandatory for parents to teach the children respect of their school teachers as well as their madrasa teachers. Can some of you relate to this? Today, it's the opposite. You expect your child to become a hafiz of the Quran or to become a university graduate and a professional, but you have the audacity to talk disrespectfully to the school teacher and to the madrasa teacher. And you want your children to succeed. This is not the Islamic ethic. Knowledge is sacred. And if it's not beneficial knowledge, then it shouldn't be taught at all. The secular sciences, biology, chemistry, physics, maths, languages, humanities, and IT and technology, this whole range of subjects, taught properly, if the content is appropriate, this is beneficial knowledge. And it's necessary knowledge. If there were no engineers, you'd have no roads and bridges. You wouldn't have roofs like this one without a pillar, mashallah. If you didn't have people in medicine working in the different branches of medicine, you'd have a sick population with nowhere to go, with serious ailments. It's actually fard kifaya Islamically, in deen, to have people who fulfill the responsibility of the needs of the community in various professions. If nobody knew how to weave and sew, then you'd have no clothes. If there were no shoemakers, we'd all be walking barefoot. You need every profession, and you need people in every profession. So, the sciences and the subjects which are taught in school, in order to give the children a broad general education, preparing them for the world, this is beneficial knowledge. Of course, it needs to be underpinned with an Islamic value system and belief system. The absence of that will mean that the child has no spiritual, dini identity. It's not through school that children will learn to respect their parents and spouse and children. That deep value, deep-rooted value system, that's going to come from deen, that nur. That shine on the face and forehead is going to come from deen. But this does not mean that we undervalue and underestimate the contribution of teachers, be they in the schools or, coming back to the dini side, the madrasas. So my point today, the lesson we need to learn is if, and I'm sadly saying this is the majority, I've touched on this point, I think last year, the year before, the division of 4 types of parents. Let's just mention it today for the benefit. How many types of parents are there? In my observation of over 2 decades, there are 4 types of parents. Number 1, there are the parents who couldn't care less. You've put the school children into the school or the madrasa and it's their business. They can look after the child. You don't take an interest and you don't give any quality time. There's one category of parent. Out of mind, out of sight. Your children are out of the way. They're a nuisance for you. You want to have your own easy time. That's one category of parent. Don't be of this category. The second category of parent is the one I've just mentioned. The one that only takes the side of the child. Your child is always right, even if they're wrong. That's contrary to the explicit teachings of Islam and of the Quran. Doesn't matter if it's your own father, brother or son, sister, mother, daughter. If they're right, they're right, they're wrong, they're wrong. This is how it is. This is the attitude that my child is always right. This is a common situation. Very common. In fact, you could say that it's something between 40-60% perhaps. Parents who think my kid is always right. So you actually develop enmity for a teacher that you've never met and you've never spoken to and you've never tried to understand the situation. Second type of parent. The third type of parent, this is the, forgive me, but the traditional desi parent. This is the parent, the teacher is afraid to report a problem to the parent because the parent will be too harsh with the child. Too harsh with the child. Don't be of this category either. It's like the child has brought indignity to your door because you've received a complaint from the school. That's not the attitude to have. You're meant to be part of the team. 3 types of problem parents. Unfortunately, the 4th type of parent, who's the balanced, sensible, moderate parent, is a tiny minority. This is the parent who understands that everybody is a stakeholder. The child has their rights and they are allowed to express their concerns. And you need to listen in a balanced and open-minded way. And you have your rights as a parent. And the teacher has their right as a teacher. And everybody has to work together. And this is the ingredient to success. These are the ingredients to success. This is a recipe for success. If you want your children to go far in the world, in the dunya, in the akhirah, in their deen, in their dunya, this is the type of relationship you want with the school and with the madrasa. So I began by talking about the importance of education.
1:01 p.m.
Let me just close. Unfortunately, let's hope there's nobody like that within this gathering, mashallah. There are some very badly behaved parents who are very, very abusive towards the teachers of their children. And they are a barrier for the children's progress. Understand that we need to build a partnership with schools and madrasas across the board. This is an issue, as I mentioned, across the country. Papers have been written on it. Let us understand our responsibility towards our children and their future, and let us play a positive role in this regard. May Allah grant us tawfiq.